Setbacks. Never boring, never dull. Knowing for a brand, everyone in football knows what Peterborough do. What's Peterborough most famous for in the last 20 years? Developing and creating future superstars for the bigger leagues, making a lot of money. Unbelievable scouting, unbelievable recruitment, and by the way, some bloody good football as well. Where it used to be 95% was all domestic money, it might be 70-30 now. So if they're all getting 150 million, I don't know, 100 million from the UK-based TV deal, 50 million from abroad. You have to expand your brand. But I've always had that inner belief, okay, it's not going to finish me off. It might hurt me. It might, knock me down a peg or two for a while, but I can come back from it. And there's no shame in going backwards to go forwards.
Welcome to The Football Economy, the show where we explore the financial forces shaping the global evolution of soccer. I'm Ibrahim, and today we're taking a closer look at club ownership in the lower leagues, where bold leadership, strategic risk-taking, and long-term vision is essential to staying competitive both on and off the pitch. Joining me today is Darragh MacAnthony, one of the English football's longest-serving and most influential owners. At just 30 years old, he became the youngest chairman in the Football League when he acquired Peterborough United for only £1 in 2006. Since then, Dara has led the club to back-to-back promotions to the Championship, developed talents like Ibrahim, I'm sure you've heard of that name, and lifted multiple EFL trophies, famously against Birmingham. That's Tom Brady's team. Now, in his 19th year at the helm, he continues to combine entrepreneurial ambition with a strong belief in sustainable football success. Dara, welcome to the pod.
Well, all good.
Great. So, let's start with this. Your journey is quite inspiring. I know you had a business before going into football. It's turning £6,000, if this is correct, one of the world's, into turning £6,000 into a world-beaten business in terms of property, right, and then going to buy a football club for £1. What sort of mindset develops that to be able to go into that sort of like action?
Youthful exuberance at the time. When I was a salesperson, in my late teens, early 20s, living in Spain. I grew up in Spain. And basically you had three choices in Spain, coming out of school. You could go back to university in the UK. I did that for 3 days. It didn't work for me. And I went back to Marbella, where I was from. You could basically do real estate, timeshare, or rent a car business if you weren't fluent in Spanish. And that was kind of what you were, pigeonholed into career-wise. Or I got back to Ireland, and I never wanted to do that. For me, I found I could sell, and I was just lucky that was something I was good at. And I went into real estate, worked at a real estate company. I was one of their top closers, got fired, not selling properties for other stuff. They thought I slept in too much. I partied too much. I was too young, too crazy. I didn't take it serious because I was in my early 20s and living in Marbella, it's a hell of a lifestyle, the whole party thing. So at that point, I was owed about £25,000 in commission. So they gave me a choice. Do you want to wait a year to get your money, or do you want to take a settlement? So they offered me basically £5,000. That was a settlement instead of 25. So I didn't want to wait a year. I took the £5,000. I used the £5,000 to do property show, go out on my own, and then basically got the bug for, I became a workaholic. It was really weird. It was like a mindset change, and from being a party boy, from, selling homes, getting paid well and not really caring because I work for someone else. Suddenly I cared. Suddenly I thought, well, I've gotten a type of personality that probably doesn't fit with working for the people. So don't play well with others. So basically, I need to work for myself. So I launched a business, in the course of 6 years, we went from me to having 2,000 salespeople. We had 90 offices in 20 countries. Basically, all I did was everything I made, I put back into the business constantly and just rolled and rolled and rolled. I didn't care about tomorrow. I was in my 20s. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I didn't have all those pressures people have. So it was really easy to take risks. And none of them were calculated risks. There were a lot of risks. But for me, if it stopped, I knew I always had the talent to be able to sell. So it didn't matter if the business, got into issues. Anyway, so I got on a great run, built a mini empire of privately owned real estate companies selling properties in all these countries. And then in the mid 2000s, 05, 06, got married, had children. Best thing I've ever done in my life, but it took my edge away. It took my eye away from an expanding business that now owned a TV station. now under the media side to it. And basically 08, 09 came, the crash, Lehman Brothers, all those things. And a business like mine where, basically properties abroad, which are like a luxury, people stopped wanting them. Mortgages weren't around anymore. So it just went from that to really quickly. And I never really thought that would happen. I was young, naive. And probably what I could have done was sticking in college a bit longer, learn about those finer things, running a big empire. And I took a battering, publicly, everything else. And the reason I took a battering was because I was young and dumb enough to go and buy a football club during all of this. And suddenly everyone's like, who's this young Irish guy driving Ferraris and Bentleys who suddenly bought a football club? So I was a really easy target for the media to write crappy stories, wrong stories, crap on Google, stuff that was absolutely untrue. They just came for me. Oh, at that stage, 09, 2010, I moved my family to the States. I always wanted to basically move to America. I wanted my kids to grow up there. I wanted them to have the college system in America, which funny enough, now coming around to today, my kid went to Auburn last year. I've got a kid going to Alabama this summer. And then my third kid in 2 years will go to college as well. So that was the whole point of moving to the States. So really football was my salvation during 08 and 09, owning a football club, which is mad to say because it's a mad world we live in, owning a football club, but getting me away from everything that was going on in real estate and the crap publicity and all that stuff that happened. It definitely taught me lessons. Look, I got battered, but I came out of it on the other side. It was a great life lesson. I'm not involved in selling real estate anymore. It's not something I ever loved doing. I just happen to be bloody good at it. If I had to tomorrow, I could go and sell houses for fun. And you get some of my fans, you can call them fans, maybe you call them critics, who like to call me the real estate salesperson as if it's an insult. But at the end of the day, if you can build an empire, build a life that allows you to buy a football club and homes all over the world and live a lifestyle I have by being a real estate salesperson, I'm sure we'd all sign up to it. So there were many lessons there, and that's maybe for another day, because we're talking football and football club and all that stuff. But what I managed to do when I bought a football club is I'm a big Liverpool fan, and I didn't have the money to buy a Liverpool. So, but I wanted to buy a sport. And the reason I was doing it at the time was I wanted to release from the pressure of being a workaholic. I thought if I bought a football club, I'd be able to enjoy my weekends, be a bit of downtime, because I was a 7-day-a-week guy, 17, 18 hours a day, full on all the time. So I bought this football club, and I had this mad idea, in 05, 06, it was based on data, statistics, stuff that wasn't around back then. I wanted to bring, my whole real estate business was built on that. It was built on basically probability statistics. It was something that was always in my mind with marketing. So I decided to apply it to a football club before a lot of other people were doing it. And that's where a lot of our transfers, a lot of our history, a lot of our story is based on creating that recruitment policy I put in place 19 years ago, which we still pretty much do to today, with a few additions to it and a great academy. So, therein lies, quickly in the summary, to start your podcast for people, the story of me buying into a football club, which was originally a passion and fun project, turned into an obsession, something I love doing, something I love owning, but it doesn't get any cheaper. If someone was to say to me, would you buy a football club? I'd be like, hell yeah, I'd do it all over again. But make sure you got deep pockets and make sure you go into it with your eyes wide open, and don't ever be surprised at anything that happens in football. But still to this day, you still get surprised by the things you see.
Right. I mean, you basically touched on a lot of things there, but one thing specifically, let's say the Lehman Brothers fiasco, and this is well covered in different media outlets. So this is 09, 08, 09. I mean, you've mentioned how this informed your business lens going forward, but from a football perspective and being an owner of a football club, how did this sort of make you more risk averse, if it did, and how did this make you consider sort of risk mitigation and risk assessment in that sense?
Well, when Lehman Brothers happened, it happened fast. It was fast and furious. And, being in a business that was reliant on mortgages for your clients to get second homes abroad, we were right there. So the minute the mortgage markets disappeared in countries like Spain, Portugal, Bulgaria, all these things, suddenly you had people, who couldn't complete on properties, people who couldn't get mortgages that thought they could get mortgages because they were just readily available before. People could get access to not free money, but loans galore. Owning a football club that was basically eating 2-3 million of your income every year, suddenly when you haven't got any income, you suddenly have to, what would the right word be? Pivot. And you have to, okay, well, I've got to make my club more sort of self-sustainable, and that's, you start going down that rabbit hole of, we have an academy, we have a structure, we have a way of doing things. And, my goal every year is Peterborough United every year loses between 3 to 5 million, in League One. There was a thing the other day, most League One clubs losing 7, 8, 9 million every year. And we're one of the best run clubs from that perspective because we don't lose that money every year. We actually have transfers that pretty much cover most of our losses every year. Yes, I have to still put money in occasionally, but where it might have been in the past, in the millions, it will be now down to under £1 million every year. And that's for a club that goes out and buys players. That's for a club that usually, for our last season, which was a stinker, is competing for promotion at the top of League One, winning trophies, doing all those things. And we have a certain way of doing things, a model, and it's all based on, you talk about risk averse and whatever else. I'm not as much of a risk taker as I was before I got married and had kids. I'm a little bit more, I wouldn't use the word cautious because I don't love the word cautious, but I miss being a little bit balls to the wall and all in type guy. And that's the type, my most successful period in life was when I didn't give a shit. Use my language. I just basically would come up with ideas, would back myself, would finance those ideas and go for it. And as you suddenly get children and married and an expensive lifestyle with families and kids and colleges and school and a way of life they're used to, you suddenly become more humble in that approach. You suddenly become more cautious, dare I say it, and you maybe don't go as much balls to the wall. So I'm actually, as I approach my 50th birthday, and I bought into Peterborough when I was 29, as I approach my 50th birthday, I'm actually going back to, I want to be more balls to the wall type of guy I used to be. That works for me a lot more than this conservative approach maybe I've had the last 10, 15 years. Because the one thing I've learned is you can't, and I say this to people I know, whatever money you have, you can't sit on it forever. At some stage, two things need to happen. You need to enjoy it and you need to use it, And in business in particular, I have a friend of mine who has a great life, but the idea of him spending 20 grand on a first class plane, no matter how wealthy he gets, he would never do it. He would never do it. And I'm the type of guy, unfortunately, would spend a lot of money on flights, jets in the past, all those things. I'd spend 100 grand on a holiday. I wouldn't think twice, And this guy would be up there in wealth with me, and I'm not as wealthy maybe as I once was, but I have a good lifestyle and I do okay for myself. But I said to my friend, I said, you know what? I said, you've got to look at life and go, are you taking it with you? Because when all is said and done and you leave this world and you've left this pile of money, what are you doing with it? Are you leaving it to your kids? You shouldn't really. Your kids should make their own fortune. Are you leaving it to a dog charity, a cat charity, all that stuff? No, you got to live life and enjoy life. And while you're on this planet and you're healthy enough and you're lucky enough and fortunate enough to be healthy enough, you have to live the life good life. And you should aim to live a good life. And all the people that work for me, I always motivated them to spend well, live well, enjoy it. Now, that might be generations are different nowadays. So somebody younger than me would go, well, you're hurting the climate by traveling around the planet. And you got to do this and you got to do that. Well, I don't profess to that. I live my life my way. I don't care how you judge me. You can have your beliefs. I have my beliefs. They might be very different from you. You might not like me for that, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to give you my opinion on it. And I'll respect and listen to your opinion. And we may not agree, but I would hope, there's a mutual respect somehow there. Not too much nonsense the last 5, 6 years since COVID has been politics and different opposing views. And if you support this party or that party, you can't get along. I don't, go with that. At the end of the day, I'm like, you be you, I be me. So I'm going to live on this world as well as I can and live life to the full. And I'm going to encourage my children to do the same. And that's how I've always been. Getting back to it, risk averse and all those words and whatever we use, I want what's the best for my club. I don't want to put my club out of business. So, of course, I'm going to try and be prudent, but I still want us to be competitive. And in a league like ours, where you have your Birminghams of the world and your big clubs that keep coming up and down, we've had Leeds, Sheffield Wednesday, Southampton, Brighton, some clubs. You can either be a bystander and watch them, or you can try and compete with them, not financially, in other ways. So you've got to try for some broad strokes. And we've always managed to do that. We've won promotions. We've been successful in this league by being outside of the box a little bit and taking risks and some of the things we do. And make sure, because no football club is basically going to operate and run itself, in our league especially, just based on what TV money we get and gate money we get. It's physically impossible. The wages have gone up so much, the agents' fees, all the salaries, the transfer, all those things have risen, but TV money hasn't risen that much. Commercial money hasn't risen that much. By the way, we had probably one of the best commercial departments outside of the Premier League. My commercial director, Alex, the figures we do, compared over the last 5, 6 years, the growth and everything else, it's unprecedented. And I pride myself on that because it's very much in my vein of how we used to sell in the old days. We have a crew that are the best closers in the commercial business. And we spent like nearly $1 million last year in a mega store. We have one of the best commercial stores for our football club our size outside the Premier League. If you saw it, it's unbelievable. That store alone is going to do over $1.5 million this year. For a League One football club our size with 9,000 fans. That's incredible, alone. So all those things are little things we're trying to get the inches to help us, particularly with a wage cap in League One. Because when you're against a club who gets 30,000 fans on a Saturday and you're getting 9,000, they're allowed to spend a lot more than you. They're allowed to do things that you can't do. So you have to find all those small little inches here and there to get as close as you can to it. You know what I mean? We're never going to be able to pay what Birmingham pay. We're never going to compete in that market. But we have to try and do it a different way. So, yeah.
Yeah, well said. I mean, so you're a business owner. You're also a sports owner. There's a lot of parallels between you and Steve Ballmer, the former CEO of the second CEO of Microsoft, and
Yeah.
And probably majority single shareholder, individual shareholder, largest single individual shareholder of Microsoft, right? All institutions. And in a recent podcast, he said people in business like to talk about how business is very agile and you have to be very accountable to different stakeholders. But in his experience, sports is way more accountable because you get your report card after the game.
Yeah, Saturday and a Tuesday night. Yeah, straight away.
My question to you is, do you agree? And if you do, how do you balance the pressure and also the accountability that comes with being an owner?
Yeah, because I think when you own a sports franchise, and we call it, I'm now American, so I'm going to call it a sports franchise, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, whether it's whatever else, you're accountable to your fan base. And, in our game in England, the fans really own our clubs because without your fans, there is no real club. Now, whilst they own your club, spiritually, they don't pay the bills of the club. Yes, coming to a game on a Saturday helps towards, your bills, but really it's 7-8%, of your income, 10% if you're lucky. It's really important that you give your fans something. And the most important thing I say to every new owner who comes in and buys a football club, they always say, what are the main things you should do when I buy a football club? And I'm like, be transparent, be out front to the fans, good and bad. Don't just come out when you're winning and give it the big one and wave your balls around and everything's great and everything's wonderful. And the minute there's criticism, go hide it. Talk to your fans. And if you've got problems, again, talk to your fans. So, I'll come out and say to our fans, look, we're cutting our cloth accordingly. We might be doing this, we might be doing that, but we're still going to have a go. And we're going to go down a different route. And we're going to still try and present entertainment on a Saturday and a Tuesday. And we're going to give it our best. And at times we may fall short. But as long as we give it our best, we hope you support us. And the one thing I've been very fortunate in 19 years is, bar a few fans who might moan and whatever, and it's usually the newer generation of fans who aren't used to Peterborough from 30, 40 years ago who weren't as successful. The majority of fans understand who we are, what we're trying to do, and have enjoyed the ride. And the ride's been a roller coaster since I've gone in there. We've had 4 promotions, we've won 3 cups. We've done things clubs our size haven't done. We've produced unbelievable players that have gone to the Premier League playing for England, worldwide names in football. We play a style of football. You watch a lot of football in the lower leagues. It can be very direct. It can be very old fashioned. We don't play that way. We play the ball on the floor. It's possession based. It's goals, front foot. We've been one of the top goal scorers in the English Football League the last 19 years. I think we're top 5 out of 92 clubs, including the Premier League, for goals scored in football. That will back up, since I've gone in there, what I want. I want exciting football. I don't want my fans going to watch 0-0s on a Saturday. I don't want my fans watching football where they have to check where the ball is and it takes a while to get back and play. I want them watching something that they believe in. They can get behind our young lads. The last 2 years, we've been the youngest team in the EFL. Average age of like 22.6. And, last season we had a bad season. The season before, playoffs, winning the cup. Season just gone. We won a cup against all odds, beat Birmingham, the big spenders at Wembley. Nobody gave us a chance. We did that with 4 teenagers in the team. A few of them from our academy. Those are the kind of stories you want to see in football. So that's what we do. But again, Steve's right. And I'd love to have 2% of Steve Ballmer's wealth, because I'd be, enjoying life a lot more probably. But the reality is he's absolutely right. You are judged on a Saturday and a Tuesday. And on social media, when your social media presence, and I use social media, I've done for a long time, your fans, particularly the ones unhappy, a lot of the younger ones, who are in their teens, will come on there and say some crap. And they'll come on there and I always laugh. My son's 19. The idea that my son would be a disrespectful runt and go on social media and start slagging somebody off, would never do it. He's been brought up better than that. So that still amazes me nowadays, young people who go on social media, who feel, and have the minerals behind the screen, go on there and call somebody a name or have an opinion and It's like, when you've achieved 0.5% of what I have in life, then come and join the conversation. Until then, do your time, put the work in. That's what we say.
Yeah, well said. And it's a word that younger people should take heat from. I mean, in 2014, you mentioned you put in $5 million of your personal money into the club, like a period of 11 months. So my question to you is, over your entire period, I mean, you say right now you still put in a certain amount, but not as much before. What would you say has been the overall sort of like total amount you put in since you basically took over the club?
I'd say over 20 years, I'm owed less than $5 million now. Talking dollars, I'm owed less than five. But over the 20 years, I'll probably put in north of 25 million, but, through good windows and, when we've had a chance to break even, make a profit, do whatever, I got some of it back. I sold some shares a few years ago, got some of it back. So I've never made a profit out of football club. People who laugh and go about our transfers, now you must be making loads of money. It's not designed for that. I didn't buy a football club to make profit. Where I make a profit is if I sell the club. The club's worth a lot of money compared to when I first bought it. And that's based on, one, there's a big market, foreign buyers want to buy football clubs. Two, our proximity to London. Three, we're one of the only clubs you could go in. It's a plug and play football club where we have a squad worth north of 30 million already full of young starlets. Most people go in and buy a club, they have to start from scratch and go and buy loads of players and do this and do that. So we already have a running model. That's why my club's worth a lot of money. So when I leave Peterborough, will I end up on the other side of having made money from being in football? Yes. If we suddenly go on a run and it's a miracle run, and I ask the big man upstairs every day for this run, and we go to the Premier League in the next 5 years, again, I'll get paid back. Maybe I'll even end up turning a profit and making money. But really, it was never about that. And I don't own a club to make money. I own a football club because I love being part of it. I have a passion for it. And then I have my main stuff outside of football that pays my bills every year.
You might be the most passionate and possibly the most transparent football owner in the whole pyramid, in my opinion.
At times.
I mean, so my question to you is about failure. So I think you've mentioned that you don't believe in the word failure, you believe in setbacks. Yeah. So when you've basically witnessed relegation, and what's the drive home like? What are your thoughts? How do you process that?
Yeah, I've always said there's no such word as failure, only setbacks. Because, and if you want to go past that and go, everyone's failed. Everyone's in setbacks. So, show me one person in their life who's never failed at anything personally or business-wise, and I'll show you a liar. Because everyone's gone through, and they will continue to, as will I, as will everyone around me. And I try and instill in my children that failures, setbacks, whatever you want to call them nowadays, don't define who you are and shouldn't stop you in your tracks or ever curb your ambition. The person who suddenly becomes less ambitious based on a few failures, setbacks, is a person who should never have tried in the first place. So I'm of one of those where we've been relegated and we've had some cruel things happen to us. When you're in football 19, 20 years, you're on the side of some magic things happening, and you're on the side of some horribly cruel things happening. So one thing you can't do is take it personally. I sometimes blame our Lord, what have I done? You know what I mean? Is this on me? I'm very superstitious and all that. But really, in a cold light of day, the drive home is not good. The moments aren't good. But the moments that happened, like Wembley recently, I had my family, my children, we beat Birmingham. There's 60,000 people there. I'm on the pitch. We got a trophy. I'm in the dressing room afterwards. I'm seeing the players, the happiness in their eyes. I'm seeing my kids in a box. I'm sat next to Tom Brady and the owners of Birmingham who are expecting to win. And I'm watching my team lift a trophy. Moments like that are precious. We're very lucky. We just had 2 years in a row of those moments, and won that trophy 3 times in 11 years. That's our FA Cup in the EFL. So you enjoy those, you embrace them. You get home afterwards in the kitchen, you got the cup on the counter, you're making a cup of tea with your kids, your wife. My kids are at the age now where they can come to those events. They didn't early on when we were winning success. So I look around the room and I cherish that. You just don't ever know when the next success comes, and you never know when the next setback comes. But the one thing's for sure, unless you're Man City, Real Madrid, you're pretty sure most clubs are going to experience setbacks, disappointments, but you're also going to hopefully experience successes, and that's what we're in the game. We don't go out to play on a Saturday and Tuesday to be middle of the run. We want to compete, particularly when we're in this league. The Championship, tougher. We want to get back there. We want to stay there. We want to build from that. 3 years ago, we decided to go young. We decided to really, really push our academy. Our academy now is a Cat 2 academy. It's one of the top 30, 35 academies in the EFL and Premier League now for producing young talent. Once it went Cat 2 4 years ago, we knew we were going to produce better players, we'd have better coaches, we would more funding, we'd be putting more funding in. And I'm hoping probably in another 2 years, you're going to see half of the Peterborough team will be homegrown players who are basically doing their stuff in the Championship. And if they're not doing their stuff in the Champ, it's because we sold them for 10, 20 million to the Premier League. And we'll use that money to improve the club, improve the facilities, our training ground, all the things we need to do. So the one thing I would hate about owning Peterborough at the moment is we have too much debt. Since COVID, we amassed a lot of debt. One of the things I'm reducing, we have too much debt. Every football club's got too much debt. But ideally, you'd want to sit at around 5 million. That's the perfect amount of debt for a club. We're north of like, I think, 12, 13 at the moment. We were at 18. We brought it right down. We're improving all the time. There's too much debt. And that's the one thing I want to try and take away from the club is, get rid of that debt as much as we can. And I'm working all the time on that because I think it will make us less fat, and a bit trimmer. And I think we'll be a well-oiled machine when we come out on the other side of it. So it's a lot of hard work it's going to take to get there, but none of it frightens anybody at the club. I'm very fortunate to have great people in leadership roles, great people even in, the roles under leadership, who are young, who are growing, who are becoming great all the time. And we're going to lose some of them as well. Like we've lost players to the bigger clubs. We have some of our talent, outside of the football, working in the background, in the back offices, who are getting plucked by bigger clubs. But that's a testament to how we've honed them, developed them, and seen them grow with us. So yeah, lots of things there.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I think also that it's quite clear that the passion still is there, probably even more now, because I've looked through old archives of your interviews, and it seems like the same sort of like fire is still burning, probably even more.
Sure.
Yeah. My question now will move into, the management philosophy that you hold. One of your previous interviews, I think on TalkSport, you said that, you have very strong opinions. I think that's very clear for anyone listening. But you mentioned that you wouldn't hire Roy Keane as a manager in your club. And you mentioned basically because of the generational changes. And this is well understood by everyone. So my question to you is, how do you square that with the fact that you've also criticized some players for lacking the mental strength to basically deal with the demands that you have for a club such as Peterborough?
Yeah, generations. The one thing I've learned is, and my comment about Keane and other managers, certain managers, and you might say it about Mourinho nowadays. Mourinho 10, 12, 15 years ago at Chelsea, style of management worked with younger players. Put him now in that situation, and maybe not so much. And I've learned with my manager, Darren Ferguson, he's learned with me that the players we have now that are aged 19 to 23 are very different from the players 19 to 23 we had in 06, 07, 08, 09. They're just built differently. They're brought up differently. Now, I don't want a lot of young players coming at me after you put clips of this up and having a go at me like they usually do if I say something. And this is half of the problem. They're all far too sensitive, and back in 05, 06, 07, I had McLean, Mikhail Smith, George Boyd, Lee Tomlin. These were young men who were built a little bit differently. They took setbacks like brilliantly. They basically were like, oh, really? Is that the way it's going to be? I'm going to show you. Nowadays, young players, you give out criticism, they can't take it. And I see it with my own kids, by the way. I've got 3 teenagers and they're in that generational age, 16, 18 and 19. They don't like criticism. They don't want to hear from a 50-year-old man telling them how the world should be. And nor should they at times. And it's okay for them to have their own opinion. But the one thing I instill in my kids is some key traits. One, you be the hardest worker in the room. I don't want to hear any Monday to Friday nonsense. Your generation's too hung up on Monday to Friday, working less, more time off, more time for your head, more time for this. Yeah, you're going to have setbacks and failures. You're going to have issues. You bounce back. But the harder you work, the luckier you get. And that's what I'll always instill in my children. Nobody's going to hand you anything. Just because I've got a few quid doesn't mean you're entitled to anything. So you can lose the entitlement. The one thing me and my wife always saying, we have a few drinks and get drunk on holiday in Dubai is, we'll have done our job with our 3 kids if we brought up 3 hardworking human beings. Yeah. And what I mean by that is 3 human beings who basically want to go out and set their mark on the world. And they're going to work their nuts off to do it and get it. And, that for me is really important. And I see too many young people in academies in their early 20s now who basically a manager will give out to them. They'll get torn a new asshole. They get a 2-week fine. They get whatever else. And it's like, that's it. I want to move. I want out. I'm not dealing with this. I don't like the way you spoke to me. You can't speak to me like that. Grow up. Grow up. Yeah. That's why so much of the generation are having issues buying homes, making loads of money. Grow up. Far too sensitive. Like, this is the real world. If you can't take your superior, and I'm not talking about them bullying you. I'm talking about them giving you, chastising you, telling you off, telling you where you've done wrong. When I was growing up and I was working, I wanted to know how to do something right. And if I did something wrong, I didn't care if you screamed at me or told me I was doing it wrong. Tell me, show me, tell me, and then I'll do it right. And my favorite saying in life is never make the same mistake twice. So if you work for me, you don't make the same mistake twice, you're safe. You keep making the same mistake over and over, that's a you problem, not a me problem. So I just feel it's just different generation wise. One of my lessons, my wife worked for me, and she said this the other night. She said, when you used to bollock people or tell people off who worked in the real estate business, and, I could not be vicious, but I could be quite aggressive in my approach because I used to only employ 18 to 23-year-old people. I always felt the human brain at that age was like a sponge and they would take a lot more on board than, say, someone older than that. I don't want to be an ageist, but I always felt that for a young boss, that was the best kind of demographic to hire. And she said, you would basically, you could tear someone down a strip for making a mistake or doing whatever. But the one thing you always did when they left your office, they felt $1 million because you lifted them back up. And my advice to any leader, any manager would be, you can throw teacups, you can have a temper tantrum, you can, ball someone out for being late. You can say, you've done wrong or you didn't work hard enough. But the one most important thing you must do when you've finished having that discussion with somebody is lift them up. Tell them the good things they have. Just don't tell them how shit they are all the time. I'll give out to my son, my daughters, whatever. But at the end, I'll tell them their assets. I'll go on about the things they need to improve, but I'll tell them how good I think they are. I'll tell them how much I love them. I'll tell them how wonderful I think they can be. And I'll give them that. I will reassure them. But, they've got to do the rest then. But what I won't do is I won't just go, get out, because that's not the right way to handle it. Now, a lot of the time, in the old days, you'd have players at managers, they'd get a ticking off, they'd go out and they'd show the manager. Nowadays, they get a ticking off, they're ringing their agent, they're ringing their mom and dad, they're moaning and crying like little crybabies. That is some of the issues we've got going on in the world. And before I get a 21-year-old, Frappuccino drinking lunatic coming at me about, they should only work Monday to Friday, you know what I mean? And this, that, and whatever else is like, that's a you problem, not a me problem. Save your tweet, save your breath. I have no interest in hearing that crap.
Right. I mean, so just to dial back into what you mentioned there, I think you mentioned family dynamics.
Yep.
You also mentioned lifting people up after you've basically given it to them straight. So, I mean, one individual that comes to mind when I hear all of that is Darren Ferguson. Obviously, Darren Ferguson has a very famous last name because he's a son of Alex Ferguson, Sir Alex Ferguson. My question to you here is, you've worked with him, during the ups and downs. He's been very successful for you. How has your relationship, basically evolved, and how do you manage that sort of like owner and manager relationship? Or is there no, is there no boundaries in that sense?
There's when we first started working together, I was 29, 30, he was 33. He was in his first job in football. I was into my first ownership year. So it was almost like we were learning on the job together, and we were probably fearless. And that's why we had so much success early on. And then when things didn't go well for a sticky patch, I basically got temperamental. He basically, didn't want to hear it. And the communication just kind of stopped. And what we've learned over the years is we've learned trust, transparency, directness, honesty, partnership. All those things are key between owner and manager. Point in case, we spoke 6 times today, speaking about staff, players, pre-season coming up. Every day we speak now. He's just gone and had his holiday with his family, left him alone for like 10, 11 days. Because I said to him, look, let me deal with all the crap back here. Let me deal with all the players we need to move on, players we're going to try and recruit that we've all had meetings about. You go on holiday, and when you get back, we'll then speak about it. But just clear your mind, go away with your family, try and just enjoy your family. Since he's come back a couple of days ago, we've been full on every day. And, the one thing is just truth and honesty. I'll say to him, I've tried, I can't make that deal happen. I want to get that player for us. I just can't do it. They're asking for this. We're here. And he'll go, Chairman, you've done your best, don't worry. Or he'll go, I really need you to push for this, Chairman. Then I'll try again. So it's always based on truth and honesty. Last year was a real crap season for us. And he was probably the only manager in the bottom 9 clubs in our league who didn't lose his job. The other eight clubs all changed their manager. And the reason I didn't change my manager is because I had complete trust in him and his staff. And I tell them every year, I give them freedom. They have freedom. And I'm not saying they're not sackable and they can't lose their jobs for underperforming. But I've always said, as long as you do this, as long as we play a certain way, as long as we develop young players, as long as we give our young players a chance, as long as we have this mindset, your jobs are not secure because there's no security in football, there never is, but you're going to get my backing. I'm going to be with you all the way. So even in February, March, when we were having a horrendous run and with a lot of injuries and everything was going against us, the football was crap, they all had my trust. And I made it known to them, I get it. We're all suffering. We're having a horrible time. But I do have complete confidence that you guys will spin this. We'll win the cup. We'll stay in the league. We'll do what we've got to do. And we did all those things. Now, a lot of other people around me went the other way and got rid of their management staffs. I like working with the people I've worked with me. And I think that's really important. And yes, I'm very involved. I own the club. I pay the bills. Of course, I'm involved. And between Barry Fry and Liz Elson, who's our head of football with Barry Fry doing transfers, and then the manager and my CEO, Dawn, I've got 2 women in 2 key power positions. I'm not into demographics and who you sleep with and if you're a man or a woman, if you're black or white, the best person for the job, just by luck. the best people for the job at CEO was a woman, and in football as well. And I treat them, this is the beauty about me. You can never call me a misogynist. You can never call me whatever, because I treat women and men equally. I used to love hiring female salespeople because they moved on from a bollocking quicker than men. They didn't care. Men got more emotional. Women actually didn't. And, you know, and I'd always say to the females in my teams, I'm going to treat you exactly like that arsehole over there, that guy. I'm going to talk to you the same way. I'm going to curse the same way. I will not be any different. Because the minute I'm different with you, then we have a problem. So that I've always lived my life that way. And I got two daughters. And I tell my daughters that. Don't listen to all the bullshit about you can't do this and you can't do that because you're a woman. It's all crap. Forget about all the social media. Forget about it. This isn't fair and that's not fair and blah, 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 blah. Go out and get what's yours. Go out and work your nuts off. And I promise you good things will happen. If you get caught up in, they were promoted because he was a male, they were promoted because of whatever else, just go and get it yourself and stay away from the drama. Too many young people get caught up in drama and identity politics and all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's fascinating that everyone who works for me, I enjoy working with them. I'm very straight with them. If you asked anyone who works for me, what's he like? And I probably have this reputation, and I think it's known in football. You find anybody who dislikes me that's worked with me for a long time, it would be a rare thing. They will always tell you I'm direct, I'm honest, I'm straight as you like, and they prefer it that way. Because what you don't want is you don't want somebody who lies to you and says, "Oh, you're doing a great job," and then a month later fires you. You'd rather them tell you the truth. You know, you don't want someone saying to you, "Your podcast is wonderful, you're great, I'm going to blow wind up your ass." You'd rather me say, "Well, actually, I think you need to do this, 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 and this, but overall, I love it. But here's a few things you need to improve." Because you're never too old and you're never too young to improve, to learn, take things in. You know, and I don't profess to be a know-it-all. You know, I've got a 74-year-old father who loves to try and tell me what to do every day. It's not that I don't listen to him. I respect him. I'll always listen. Then I'll do what I feel is best. And I think that's the way to be.
Yeah, no, it's well said. When I listen to you talk, it comes across to me that you might be the sort of the Irish Tony Robbins in that sense. You probably heard this before.
Yeah, I've been offered money before to do like sales seminars and write sales books, but I'll be honest with you, I never believed in any of it. I never, you know, if one of my sales guys was reading a sales book, I'd throw it in the bin. And you know, I would do my I would do my training. I trained everyone who worked for me as a salesperson. And, you know, at the end of it, I'm not disparaging the people who do sales books and seminars, and probably I could make a lot of money doing it. It was just not something I had a big belief in. You know, my father, you know, just gave me this infinite confidence when I was younger to do anything I wanted to do. And it wasn't that he trained me, it was just he told me how great I was every day. And, you know, there's something about that. You know, if you make somebody feel $1 million, they can do things that would probably even surprise themselves. And, you know, I joke with my kids, you know, about, you know, young people nowadays worry about weight. They worry about, oh my God, I'm too fat and I can't fit in this and I can't do this and I can't do that. And, you know, and you know, they're in school and people are talking about, you know, you too. And I would always say, like, my kids, as long as you got faces like that, you'll be fine, because weight can come and go. But you're always going to look $1 million like that. And always remind yourself that. You know, the things I used to say, I'd stand in front of a mirror and say. And it was just my way every day of reminding myself how good I could be. And I think people, you know, are really lacking in that. And if they're looking for the answers in the book, good for them. No problem. I won't judge anybody for doing that, because if you think it's helping, it's improving you, it's a bit like someone say, well, would you see a shrink? And that's no disrespect to psychiatrists or psychologists, whatever you want to call them. If that's what you're looking for, absolutely, go and do it. You know, me personally, you know, I haven't needed one, you know, but if my wife came to me and said, hey, we should go and see a marriage counselor, and I was like, look, is that what you want to do? Is that going to work for you? I'll do that for you. I don't think it's going to work for me, but I have an open mind, and open mind's like a parachute. If it's not open, it won't work. So I would do that, you know. But yeah, I mean, Tony Robbins, you know, it's been said to me a few times. That's why I was kind of laughing, you know what I mean? That perspective. God, he's made a lot of money over the years, that's for sure.
Good. So transitioning back into sort of the financial landscape of the partnership, you've mentioned previously that your ideal scenario, I mean, you did say something else here also, that you'd like to be in Premier League eventually, but you mentioned previous, I think probably almost 10 years ago, you said that ideally you like to see Peterborough in the championship for 5 to 6 years. And then that would allow you to basically have sort of like the option of obviously continuing to double down, or obviously take some money off the table. But now looking at it from a financial fair play lens, and obviously that's another, you know, conundrum on its own. But how do you sort of like create sort of a roadmap that is sustainable to have that transformation take place in terms of being able to actually get to the championship? And
it's a great question. Great question. So we've got to the championship a few times, and we've been unlucky not staying there, you know, cruelly a couple of times. I think it's key for our club that when we get back, and we will get back, we'll get back to the championship. We have to go about it differently we did last time. And that's not financial. It's more to do with formation and tactical. The championship's a lot more physical nowadays. The one thing I noticed when we went up a couple of years ago was the physicality changed so much since we were last there 8, 9 years before. You need to be, particularly at the back. The first thing I always joke about and say I'd do, I would say to my manager straight off the bat from day one, we're signing 3 centre halves that are 6'4" plus, and we'll build from there. You want to play nice football, you want the rest, that's great, but we're going to get those 3 giants at the back. And basically, because everyone in the championship, it's set pieces, it's physicality, it's ball in the box. If you can get that bit right, and Luton showed that a few years ago, Coventry have showed that. If you get that side of it right, the rest will take care of itself. And I'm convinced if we had the luxury, say Coventry did, of staying in the champ 2 or 3 years, and we're one of the best at doing transfer deals. When we sell a player, instead of getting 5-6 million plus add-ons to get up to 10 like Ivan Toney, if we did a deal like that in the champ, it would be 20 going up to 30. That kind of money would clear debts we have. That kind of money would give us stadium possibilities. That kind of money, more importantly, we could invest in state-of-the-art training ground. Our training ground, we've spent 3 million over the last probably 5-6 years, but we could go more. We could do better, more pitches, more facilities for the players, for the academy. We could just kick it on a different level. We could put ourselves in a position where we wipe our face every year, even turn a profit, and basically give more back to our fans, make prices cheaper for them to watch football, better facilities, everything better. But we need to be in the champ minimum 3 years to do that. So, first step is try and get our promotion again. That's what we're building at the moment. The step after that is realizing when we get to the champ, the physicality that's needed and preparing our players for that. So there's a bunch of stuff there. You always have a plan A, plan B when you're designing your cash flows, your plans for the year, all those things. Look, I'm always the optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. We won promotion out of League One, quite a few times. We've done it before. We've done it with some big clubs in our league, and we can do it again. And I need my players to buy into that. My fans will buy into it because they've seen it before. My manager definitely buys into it. If we can get our young players to believe in themselves and buy into that, we have a hell of a chance. But we have to do it by being fearless.
Right. So I'm going to lead into sort of like the agent landscape, but also potentially there's some questions that I've gotten from people who are interested in asking questions. The first one I'll ask is basically a question that was put to me by an audience member. And he basically said he wanted to know if, in your opinion, there's a cartel of agents that basically control the football transfer market.
I think in the Premier League, potentially, because you're seeing a lot of the same agents, do the business. Mendes used to be a big name a few years ago, controlled a lot of the Portuguese-based players, and, Wolves signed a lot of his talent and is stable. Yeah, everyone knows who the 3 or 4 super agents are out there. But every club, even you go down below that, has agents they like working with, and they have agents they hate dealing with. Today would be a classic example. Spoke to an agent this morning I hate dealing with, hate it, but he's got a player, so I have to deal with him. And then I spoke to 2 agents after I love dealing with. One of those agents was the Lapse agent who's just gone to Chelsea. I love dealing with him. David's one of my favourite. He's like Ivan Toney's agent. He's the Lapse agent. He's Grealish's agent. And the great thing about David is I think he rings me because for him, it's like a break from dealing with Premier League stuff. And he'll ring me and go, ooh, I need a wash after dealing with League One and you, as a joke type thing. But I love his personality. And what I love about him is he's in the middle of doing the Dara deal and he takes my phone call to speak about a player in League One. And that to me is a terrific agent, a terrific guy. And then there's other agents as well I'm dealing with similar to that we just have good relationships with. I've worked with them for 5-10 years. I've got a new agent I was dealing with last night out in Spain, and my wife was laughing. She was having a drink in the kitchen listening to me with my Irish and Spanish dealing with this agent. I used to be a lot more aggressive about agents 10-15 years ago. Hate agents, don't want to deal with agents. Look, they all have a job to do and they're trying to do the best for their client. Some of them are a bit too devious. Some of them pull some of the tricks that you could wring their neck. We had a player last year. We spent a month working on a deal through May and June. And, we'd agreed a deal with his club. We'd agreed a deal with his agent. He was coming on the Tuesday morning. Everything was agreed on the Monday. We didn't go for anyone else because we'd had the word of the player, the agent, and he basically used us to get his player to move to another club. And that's all he did. That was the whole game. He wanted to get a figure from the club we were buying from. And he wanted, and until he basically played it right to the last minute, where he was like, "I was never coming to you. I was always taking him here." So I'd rather, he's now muddied the waters. I'll rarely ever deal with him unless I really had to. But that can happen. I just wish he'd been honest and said, "Look, there's 2 of you at the table," and instead of lying. And he did lie, and the player lied as well. So things like that just wind me up. And sometimes I'd rather just be direct. And I said to an agent this morning, that's all we've got. We've got a pay cap, we've got a wage cap. I can't do any more. So I need a decision today by 4 o'clock. So other than that, your player will have to go elsewhere. We want him, we love him, we think we can do great things together. But if it's just about money, a lot of the time we're out because we are ambition over greed. We sign a player age 19 to 24. They know what they're getting when they come to us. They're getting the chance to be the next big thing. And we've done that for a lot of players over the last 19 years. We have a proven track record and a model that should automatically attract players to come to us on less money because they know after they're with us, the next step is a massive step.
Yeah, well said. I mean, so in terms of talking about the future of football in the next 10 years, you've mentioned that you're all for EFL games and Premier League games being played in the US. I know this is something that the Italian league is going towards. La Liga also is obviously going towards that. It is inevitable. The Premier League will obviously follow through and say we don't want to get left behind. But in terms of the market for this, in terms of the demand, and in terms of the potential ROI and sort of like impacts for other parts of the football ecosystem, specifically the EFL, in your opinion, how do you quantify this? Give me some numbers. I know they're going to be arbitrary or based off your intuition, but just something for fans or listeners or investors listen to and say, okay, this is grounded on some factual basis.
Sure. So the way I look at it is this. Our fans will always complain that football's too expensive. And the reason football's getting more expensive in the Football League is because players and agents are getting paid more and more. And the TV deals that keep getting done aren't enough. They're not big enough. The last 3 TV deals have been a little bit of difference each time. But a little bit of difference doesn't catch up to the wages going that way. So I look at the NFL. I live in America. I'm a big fan of the NFL. I love the NFL's approach. The ownership in the NFL basically pretty much control and run everything. And some of the representatives of the owners themselves, work on TV panels. When I say a TV panel, they are in charge of bringing the TV deals to the table, whether it's CBS, Fox, ESPN, YouTube, Amazon, Netflix. And if you look at the NFL over the last 10 years, every TV deal they've done has been, massive, like bigger and bigger than the last one. So the one thing the NFL have done really well is expanding their product across the world. So if you look in the NFL every year, you now have games that are in Brazil. You have games in Germany. You have games in Ireland. You have games in London. You have games, I think this year, where else did I see they're going? I think Spain even they're going. They are now having games all over the world. And what's that allowed them to do is to get bigger TV deals. In turn, it's allowed each club to have a bigger salary cap and spend more money and have the best talent. And all I want for the EFL, because the Premier League are never going to give us enough and we're always going to complain it's crumbs off the table. We need our TV deals to be bigger and bigger and bigger. 99% of the money we get is domestic-based money. And a small fraction of the money is based on our foreign footprint. So let's say we get £1 million a year in TV money. 25 grand of that is from abroad, probably. So we have to go that way. Can't just be in the UK. We're only going to be, until the streamers come to the party, whether it's Apple, Netflix, Amazon, or we do it ourselves and call it EFL Plus and control it all ourselves, and you can pay 20 quid a month to watch every EFL game directly through us, and we all split the money. Until those things happen, or Sky start paying us more money, we have to look outside of it and look foreign. If you look at the deals in the Premier League, their deals have got bigger based on Asia, based on America. They're doing American tours. They're in Asia every summer. More and more, if you look at the way their pot split, I would say, I don't know what it is at the moment, but where it used to be 95% was all domestic money, it might be 70-30 now. So if they're all getting 150 million, I don't know, 100 million from the UK-based TV deal, 50 million from abroad. You have to expand your brand. And I know it upsets people to hear them say, we need to play a game in America. We need to play a game in wherever, in Asia, whatever. If it helps us expand our brand, get bigger TV deals, allow me as a club to charge less for my fans on the gate, improve the facilities and experience, I'm sure a fan would be happy to give up one game a year. And that's all my mindset was about that. And I think we have to control our own destiny. And that's really important because if we don't, if you don't expand your brand, if you don't move internationally, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
Yeah. I mean, the sort of the way to look at it is, or to sort of like rephrase it, just say in other industries, if you consider football a business or the sports a business, and you consider the football itself a product, and any other
It's a product.
Exactly. In any other industry, a product is actually, if a product or a company that makes a product does not expand to other markets, you get left behind by other
100%.
business.
You do. And the problem you've got is we're a bunch of companies in the EFL losing 9-10 million a year. That can't continue because something's going to give. So then what you're going to end up with is fans are going to lose clubs like they've done in the past. and it could get worse. So, as you said, we don't expand the product. If we don't expand the viewership, bring in new audiences, we're going to be dead. If we keep sitting still and doing nothing, it'll actually get worse and worse and worse. So, as upsetting it is to hear, we want to do a game in Las Vegas, we want to do a game in New York or whatever else, I think it's the right move and the right approach to expand our brand, and it will be good for the fans in the long run. That's my opinion.
Okay, so looking at sort of like the future, you're looking at your legacy and reflecting a bit about that. So you've won back-to-back EFL trophies. This is unheard of in EFL itself. You've made history there. But trophies aside, what do you want your legacy to be at Peterborough United?
Fun, football, success, setbacks, never boring, never dull, knowing for brand. And I think everyone in football knows what Peterborough do. If you ring up anyone and say, what's Peterborough most famous for in the last 20 years? Developing and creating future superstars for the bigger leagues, making a lot of money. Unbelievable scouting, unbelievable recruitment. And by the way, some bloody good football as well. So I think, my legacy will be based on, by the time I'm finished, if Peterborough's top 12 championship, average fan base is growing to 15,000 and we're at 9-10 at the moment, no debt, always pay my bills on time, all those things. If the fans can say that about me, and they can call me a big mouth and they can call me arrogant and they can call me all those names, doesn't bother me. But if they can say, actually, he's a football man and when he came, he saw, he conquered, he had fun, it was a great ride and we enjoyed ourselves, whether it was up or down, it was never dull, that's good enough for me.
So final question before we go into the quick round. Sure. So you've survived relegation, promotion, financial crisis, the pandemic itself. My question to you here is, what would you, if someone was to ask you your secret to resilience, what would that be?
Belief, positive mental attitude where I just always believe there's solutions to problems. I hate people bringing me problems without solutions. It's okay to bring me a problem, we just have a solution and an idea. Moving quick. Urgency is a big part of how I live my life. Whether that's domestically at home with my family and be urgent about how you do things, or about work. Never sit still. Always try and be different. But, pressure affects everybody differently. And I'm not going to lie to you. I've been under massive pressure at times. COVID was massive various times in my life. But I've always had that inner belief, okay, it's not going to finish me off. It might hurt me. It might, knock me down a peg or two for a while, but I can come back from it. And there's no shame in going backwards to go forwards. Some people have shame in going backwards to go forwards. And I learned that from my dad. My dad went through some terrible times, in his own businesses when I was a young boy. And I saw it. And it never stopped him having that inner belief that, he'd bounce back. And he did bounce back. So, I have that belief myself. And it's like, life isn't just one roller coaster that goes that way, or a straight line. It is. And it just sounds really corny or whatever else, but it is a little bit like that. And I guess the thing would be, well, would it really be all that fun if it was just always easy? And it was always like everything just came easy to you? Well, that's great if you're touched by that, or should I say godliness, where everything just comes easy and everything's great. And you wake up tomorrow and you're worth £1 trillion and nothing ever changes and you got a happy family and a happy life. Good for you. Maybe you did something in a previous life that allowed you to have that. But, life isn't like that, Most important thing is your health, is your family, and then the rest follows afterwards, and the rest takes care of itself. The one thing I know is that if you're not grafting, if you don't work hard, if you don't put the hours in, if you don't put the time in, if you blame everyone else for your setbacks, and you're sensitive to criticism and all those things, you're not going to be very successful in life. I'm sorry. You're going to be a loser. If you want to be a loser, that's cool. Be a loser. But don't complain about it. That's just, I've learned that in sports as well. Like, you get bitter. Well, we dominated the game, but we lost. Yeah, but you lost. Don't act like a loser. You've already lost the game. You know what I mean? So learn from it, move on. And in football, the one thing I've learned is there's no 100% winning. Real Madrid don't win 100% of the time. My beloved Liverpool, though we won the league this year, don't win 100% of the time. The biggest clubs in the world, Man City have just shown you. You're going to lose. And I guess in football and life, it's the same. You're going to lose at times. So it's how you handle it. And it's how you bounce back from that. So, yeah.
So my transitioning to the rapid fire round. So my first question here is basically looking back into your career, what would you say has been the most impressive moment you've had with a fellow English club owner? Not necessarily all, but just in general.
Two moments, probably. One would be, as COVID started, we were ready to be promoted. We were flying and we built a really good team. And then they voted to end the season. I think there was 9 games left. We'd won like 7 of our previous 9 games. We had the club, we were in 6th place, I think, and the club in 7th had a game in hand, or had 1 game less played. and they voted to end the season. We got knocked out of the playoffs without kicking a football. And I used that to drive us the following year. We call it the Vengeance Tour, where the following year we won promotion. That promotion, after the setbacks and COVID nearly killing us all financially and finishing us all off, to win that promotion the following year was unprecedented, unbelievable. So everyone at the club played a part in that. We didn't lose one employee. You know, we racked a lot of debt up during that time, so we weren't allowed to bring any money in. The government wanted to shut everyone down for 3 years. All those things that happened, I thought we handled it as a club really well. Our fans were brilliant. They handled it even better than us. Didn't make a run on season ticket refunds, didn't want any money back, up with us, you know. That was a big moment. Winning the 2 cups 2 years in a row, and people like to take the mick out of the EFL Cup, the EFL Trophy. But when you see Sky Sports News in the background show you the domestic trophy winners, the League Liverpool, the League Cup Newcastle, the FA Cup Palace, the EFL Trophy Peterborough, and it's up there on the screen, that is the magnitude of winning that trophy. To do it against a team like Birmingham, the best team League One had ever seen in 100 years, to go and beat them so comfortably at Wembley in front of 40,000 of their own fans. You know, moments like that live with you forever. You know, that was another high moment, those 2 back-to-back, and make history because no one's done it back-to-back. So to do those things in recently is great, because it's always with fans, what have you done for me lately? And I always say to my fans, oh, we might have had a crap year in the league, but we won another cup. By the way, we won a promotion 4 years ago. By the way, you know, 4 of the last 5 years you've been in the champ, playoffs, crap year, cup. So you know, a lot of fans and clubs don't get what we get. You know, no matter what criticism they want to throw at me. So, and we're ready to go again.
Cool. So if you could have dinner with any football personality, living or dead, who would that be?
Football personality. Being a Liverpool fan, it would be, I'd want to, right now, it would be Van Dijk or it would be Mo Salah, because I'm obviously, you know, Liverpool obsessed. Throw another one in there would be Jurgen Klopp. So he's an interesting character. I know a lot of the people who own clubs in the Premier League. I know quite a few of them. So definitely, if it was in sports, it would be Tiger Woods. I've been forced to have met him once in the Starbucks many years ago in Orlando, but actually at dinner, it would be Tiger Woods. He's a sporting hero of mine. I love him. Used to be Tom Brady, but now he's like the Birmingham owner, so I didn't act like a fanboy at Wembley. Everyone else acted like a fanboy, asking for pictures, and I just couldn't do it. So, you know, that's thought would be the wrong thing to do. Be walking over like a lapdog, go, please take a photo, Tom. So, you know, I let other people do that and whatever. Yeah, I've got a lot of sporting heroes I'd love to sit. It would have to be a dinner of 10. I'll have to pick 10 of them.
What's your opinion on David Cogan, the independent football regulator? Or he's going to be the chairman in that sense. He's going to appoint CEO. And my question here is like looking forward into like 10 years from now, what do you think would be the ideal scenario in terms of him being the force for good, in terms of balancing out the EFL and also the Premier League?
I'm on the fence on the whole regulator thing. I think too much governance can be a problem at times. That will make me unpopular with a lot of VFL owners. They seem to think this regulator is going to save the day and change everything. I'm not sure it will. I know it's pissed off the Premier League. I know it's stopped discussions about us trying to get more money from them. And they've slow rolled that, you know, with the regulator not coming in. You know, we a lot of the clubs and the EFL, you know, helped, you know, Labour and, you know, have voting areas in different stadiums. We thought, well, they'll get a regulator and whatever. But, you know, Labour haven't been good for football so far. All they've done is increased our costs. So the regulator, I'm going to just say I'm going to pause my opinion until I see what he can do. I worry about over governance. You got to remember that, you know, we are businesses. We do own them. You can't have people control us to a certain extent and tell us how to operate a business as long as we stay within our rules. And there's a lot of good owners out there. So I hope, you know, if it does happen, the change is a positive change. If it's overreach, then that's a problem for me. And, you know, because I've been in this 20 years, I've had my own thoughts and opinions on what we could change inside DFL. And I think they're easy fixes, and maybe we didn't need a regulator if we imposed those changes. But, you know, not everyone is up for the changes I kind of like suggested at the time. So, but maybe they will be with more and more new owners coming in. I still feel like a young owner with young ideas, and maybe we can have some breakthroughs. So let's see. So I'm going to reserve judgment on the regulator until they're actually in place and things start happening, and we'll see where it goes. You might have me on in a year's time and I'll be saying it's terrible or it's brilliant.
That's a good sort of way to, you know, answer the question. Final 2 questions. So what's the best business advice you've received? And the second one would be, what's the best, or what business advice that is not conventional would you give to your kids?
So the best business advice I received would have been, most of the advice I received early on was like, don't do it, don't open your own business, you're too young. You don't work hard enough, you know, you don't take it seriously enough. So I kind of railed against that. You know, the most recent best business advice I would have got would be get really, really good people around you. Get really, really good people to work for you. You know, get really, really good people engaged. It's not about making them owners or partners, but making sure they're engaged like they do own part of your business. And I've always said best in class. And my advice to anyone would be that couple of things. One, work harder than everyone else in your business. If you can't show and lead from the front, well, then you've got a problem. You're not setting the tone. But I think money's the motivator. And someone who says to you that money doesn't make the world go around or that money doesn't make you happy, they don't have any. It's always been my way of looking at it. With a family, whatever, you need money. Yes, your health's more important than money, but you need money because, that's what really makes everything work, to the level you want it to work to. So I would always say, make sure that you get motivated people in your business and make sure you incentivize them with no glass ceiling. I said to my commercial team, okay, you want salaries. I get it. No problem. I've never worked on a salary in my whole life. When I worked in sales, I said, lose the salary and give me an extra 3 points on my commission. Because if I had an extra 3 points, I actually make 5 times my salary with the extra 3 points. No glass roof is key. And I think making sure that whoever works for you, you incentivize them. We open this new shop. We put even the guys who work in the shop on commissions, all those things to get the numbers up. Give people targets and objectives. People love targets and objectives. I used to, and I do the same for my kids. I give my kids targets and objectives, get this in your first year of college, get these grades, get those grades, and I'll buy you a car. I'll do this, I'll do that, and then incentivize you. And if they fall short, they ain't getting it. So, I want them to learn, you know what I mean? That if you fall short, move on, next time, good luck, you know what I mean? Type thing. So, but one of my key principles, and it's non-negotiable, is work hard. Like you need to be a grafter. You need to work your nuts off for me, and because I'm that type of person. If you're a 9-to-5er, if you're somebody who doesn't want to answer an email in the evening or on a weekend or whatever, I'm not saying I want you working 7 days a week for me, but I want you to care. The attitude nowadays is we stop working on Friday. We don't care. Don't you dare call me on the weekend. Don't you dare email me. Those people aren't going very far in life, my opinion.
So 2 things I take away from that is incentives, which Charlie Munger, the vice chairman or former vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, he said incentives. And then obviously the second thing that you mentioned was basically caring. So putting like meaning in your work, sort of like finding a purpose in what you do. So Dara, thank you so much for giving us such a compelling deep dive into football ownership. Yeah, that's a wrap for this episode of the Football Economy. If you enjoyed
Great to be on with you.
Yeah. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more conversations at the intersection of football and business. Until next time, take care. Bye.
All the best.